He hadn't been back in months, not since the expansion. Not since the press had hailed him as the man redefining Black excellence in hospitality. But today, Jordan Miles walked through the grand revolving doors of the Stanton Royal with no entourage, no briefcase, and no tailored suit. Just a red polo, dark jeans, and the kind of quiet confidence you only earn when you've built something from the ground up. The marble floors gleamed under the chandelier light. The scent of fresh orchids filled the air. This place, this empire, was his. Every tile, every policy, every smiling doorman. Except today, no one was smiling. The receptionist, blonde bob, sharp blazer, and sharper attitude, barely looked up from her monitor. "Sir," she said, not even trying to hide the irritation in her voice, "we're currently booked out for a corporate retreat. Guests only." Jordan smiled, polite but firm. "Good to know. I'll take the penthouse suite." She raised an eyebrow, laughed. "I'm sorry, you what?" He nodded. "The penthouse. I own it." A pause, a smirk, then that slow, condescending tone so many of us know too well. "Look, I don't know who you think you are, but this is the Stanton Royal. We don't give tours to delivery drivers, and you can't just walk in here demanding a room." Delivery driver. Jordan's jaw clenched, but his voice stayed calm. "I didn't come here to deliver anything," he said. "I came to check on what I built." But she wasn't listening. She waved over security. "He's being aggressive," she whispered loudly. The guards moved fast. One reached for his radio. Another stepped in front of him. All eyes in the lobby turned. Guests, staff, businessmen sipping drinks by the piano bar. Jordan's face stayed unreadable, but inside, a storm was brewing. Because this wasn't just about being mistaken. It wasn't about clothing or tone or even the insult. It was about the truth. They didn't see a CEO. They saw a Black man in casual clothes. And that, to them, meant he didn't belong. "Do you have ID?" the taller guard asked, already reaching for his arm. Jordan pulled out his phone instead. One tap. Then he held it up to his ear and said, loud enough for everyone to hear, "Get me Diane from legal, and tell corporate to pull the front desk security footage from this exact moment." The receptionist froze. The guards exchanged a glance. Something shifted. And just like that, the whole room started to realize they had just tried to throw out the man who owned everything around them. Long before Jordan Miles could afford chandeliers and penthouses, his ceiling was a leaky roof, and his floor was cold concrete. He grew up in a 2-bedroom apartment in the South Side, the kind of place where ambition felt like a luxury. His mother worked night shifts at a nursing home, and his father, gone before he turned 8. It was just him, his sister, and a stack of overdue bills. But Jordan had something most kids around him didn't envision. He used to walk past the rich hotels downtown on his way to school, staring through the glass like they were a different world. The marble floors, the suited men, the smiling guests with luggage worth more than his entire wardrobe. He didn't just want to stay in a place like that. He wanted to own it. At 16, he started bussing tables at a hotel restaurant. He scrubbed floors, folded napkins, and memorized every hallway. Not because he had to, but because he was studying, watching, learning the game from the inside. He'd stay late just to observe the front desk, noting which guests got treated with warmth and which ones didn't. One day, after getting screamed at by a guest over cold coffee, he muttered, "One day, I'll own a place like this, and nobody will be talked to like that." His manager overheard and laughed in his face. "Kid," he said, "people like us don't own hotels. We clean them." That was the moment. The moment the fire lit in him, not just to succeed, but to prove them wrong. He applied to business schools while working double shifts, got rejected from 5, took a community college class just to learn how to write a business plan, saved every tip, every penny, crowdfunded, took out loans, got scammed, recovered, invested again. By 28, he had co-founded a boutique hotel with 2 other Black entrepreneurs. By 35, he bought them out and rebranded the flagship location, the Stanton Royal. His name didn't go on the building he didn't need it to. The real power was in owning the deed. But even after all that, even after transforming into one of the most respected names in hospitality, Jordan still remembered the pain of being overlooked, judged, laughed at. That's why when he walked into his hotel in that red polo, it wasn't a random decision. It was a test. He wanted to see what kind of culture he had built, whether his own staff treated every guest with respect, or if, deep down, the old ways were still alive behind that marble desk. And today, he got his answer. If building a hotel were just about pouring concrete and hiring staff, Jordan Miles would have been a billionaire overnight. But the truth? The real construction started long before the foundation was ever laid. Because the second he told investors his dream, they smiled politely and shut the door in his face. They didn't say it outright, of course. That's not how this game works. They used words like unproven, risky, not the right fit for our portfolio. But Jordan could see it in their eyes. They couldn't picture someone like him at the head of a hospitality brand. Not without a rich last name or a Wall Street resume. But here's the thing about rejection. It only sharpened his focus. He started pitching to community banks instead of corporate ones. He knocked on doors, talked to local business owners, and even convinced a retired real estate agent to co-sign his first loan. It took months of no's before he finally got a maybe, and that maybe turned into the seed money that planted the Stanton Royal. But money wasn't the only hurdle. City permits were delayed mysteriously. Inspectors showed up with extra questions. Vendors tried to charge more than what they quoted, assuming he wouldn't know the difference. One even asked if he was the site foreman instead of the owner. Jordan didn't argue, he just kept receipts. He spent nights in that half-built lobby, typing marketing strategies by flashlight and sleeping on an air mattress in what would eventually become the VIP suite. He hired people from the neighborhood, trained young Black and brown professionals in hospitality leadership, taught them that excellence wasn't about a uniform or a voice pitch, it was about presence, dignity, and pride. And it worked. When the Stanton Royal opened, the buzz was electric. Not just because it was luxurious, but because it felt different. Warm, welcoming, intentional. The guests felt it. The media felt it. Even the investors, who once passed him by, started calling, offering deals, begging for meetings. But Jordan never forgot the early days, the smirks, the fake encouragement, the silent ceilings no one talked about. That's why he had walked into the lobby wearing a red polo and jeans, to see if his staff had truly understood what this place was built on. Because the Stanton Royal wasn't just a hotel. It was a test of the world he had worked so hard to change. It was supposed to be just another Tuesday. Jordan hadn't told anyone he was coming. No calendar notification, no boardroom meeting, no press, just him, blending in on purpose. He parked in the guest lot instead of the private garage, wore a plain red polo and jeans instead of his usual tailored suit, left his Rolex at home. No assistant, no briefcase, just a clipboard under his arm and a quiet curiosity pulsing through his chest. Because this wasn't a random visit, it was a gut check. He wanted to feel what it was like to be a regular guest again, to walk through the doors he'd built without being treated like royalty, not to be greeted with flattery, but with fairness, respect. But what he walked into was something else entirely. At the front desk, 2 employees stood whispering, one typing aimlessly, the other scrolling on her phone. They didn't even glance up when he stepped forward. After waiting nearly a full minute, Jordan cleared his throat. Still nothing. Finally, one of them, a young woman named Brielle, with a badge that read Guest Experience Lead, looked up, rolled her eyes slightly, and said, "Yeah?" Jordan stayed calm. "Hi, I was hoping to check in." She didn't ask for a name, didn't smile, just tapped on the keyboard dramatically and muttered, "We're booked." Then the other receptionist, a man named Cole, leaned over and chuckled under his breath. "This ain't a Motel 6, bro. Try down the street." Jordan paused, not because he was shocked, but because he was trying to stay composed. He gave them one more chance. "I'm pretty sure you have something available under the owner's reserve." That's when it happened. Brielle laughed out loud. "Wait, you? You think you're the owner?" She turned to Cole. "He said he's the owner. Should we call security or just give him a juice box?" Cole smirked, then muttered something under his breath, something Jordan heard all too clearly. Man, these people really think they can walk in anywhere. These people. Jordan's chest tightened. Not just because of the insult, but because it confirmed what he feared. The rot wasn't just on the surface, it had spread into the culture, into the team he trusted. The people who were supposed to represent his values were laughing at guests, making racial jokes, and turning away customers based on appearance. And they thought they were safe doing it because they assumed no one was watching. That's when Jordan's entire demeanor shifted. No more pretending. No more testing. He nodded slowly, stepped back from the counter, and pulled out his phone. With one press, he opened the internal staff directory. Another press, and he was dialing the director of operations. His voice was calm but firm. "We have a problem," he said, "and I'm going to need you here in 10 minutes. What Brielle and Cole didn't realize was that the man they just humiliated was about to humiliate them in front of the entire hotel. If Jordan had any doubts left, they were gone now. As he stepped back from the desk, quietly calling for backup, Brielle leaned over to Cole with a smirk and said loud enough for him to hear, "He's probably calling an Uber." I swear, some people just can't take a hint. Jordan stayed silent, watching them, not with anger, with precision. He wasn't just collecting insults, he was documenting behavior. Disrespect was one thing, but public humiliation? That had consequences. That's when it got worse. Another guest, an older white man in a business suit, approached the desk and was immediately greeted with a full smile, a warm, "Welcome to the Stanton Royal," and both Brielle and Cole falling over themselves to help. The contrast was blinding, not even subtle, just shameless. And Jordan? Still standing a few feet away, like an invisible shadow in the hotel he built. Then Brielle looked over and said it. "You're gonna need to move. You're making our other guests uncomfortable." Uncomfortable. Jordan turned slowly. "Excuse me?" She crossed her arms. "You've been standing there watching us, recording on your phone or whatever. If you don't leave the lobby, I'll have security escort you out." Cole added, "Yeah, man, don't make this harder than it has to be." At that point, a security guard had already started walking over. Young guy, early 20s, clearly unsure of what was going on but ready to follow instructions. "Sir," he said cautiously, "we're going to have to ask you to step outside." The moment hung in the air. Every part of Jordan wanted to explode, to raise his voice, to expose everything right then and there. But he didn't. Because power doesn't need to scream. He looked at the guard and said simply, "You might want to call your director. Tell him Jordan Miles is in the building." The guard hesitated. "Wait, Jordan Miles?" And just like that, a light bulb switched on. Jordan took a slow step forward and stood between Brielle, Cole, and the lobby crowd now staring at the scene. "You want me to leave," he said, loud enough for everyone to hear, "from the hotel that I own, because I look like I don't belong, because I'm not wearing a suit, because I didn't come in here with a briefcase and a six-figure smile." Cole's face dropped. Brielle blinked, lips parted but no words. "And the worst part?" Jordan continued, voice steady. "You didn't just disrespect me. You disrespected the mission, the culture, everything this place was supposed to stand for. You smiled at someone in a suit and tried to push out someone in jeans like hospitality, had a dress code for decency." Just then, the elevator dinged. The director of operations, a sharp woman named Marissa, stepped out, heels clicking against marble, eyes scanning the room. She saw Jordan and froze. That's when reality hit the staff like a wave. The man they mocked was the man who signed their checks, And things were about to get very uncomfortable. The moment Marissa laid eyes on him, her entire body language shifted. Her walk became faster, shoulders straightened. Her clipboard disappeared behind her back like it suddenly didn't matter anymore. "Mr. Miles," she said, rushing toward him with a strained smile. "I wasn't aware you were—" Jordan cut her off with a look. Not rude, just firm. "I didn't come here for a meeting, Marissa. I came here as a guest." He didn't raise his voice. He didn't have to. The silence around them was already loud enough. Brielle and Cole looked like they'd seen a ghost. That fake confidence they had earlier, gone. Now they stood frozen behind the desk, unsure whether to apologize, defend themselves, or just disappear. Jordan stepped aside slightly, gesturing to the staff. "Your team here didn't recognize me. That's fine. I wasn't wearing a name tag. But what's not fine is what they did recognize, or rather, what they chose to see." Marissa blinked, clearly trying to find the corporate safe words to salvage the situation. "Sir, I'm incredibly sorry for this misunderstanding." Jordan tilted his head. "You think this was a misunderstanding?" The entire lobby could hear them now. The guests pretending not to listen were absolutely listening. A woman with a suitcase had her phone half raised, pretending to scroll. Jordan turned directly to Brielle and Cole. "When I walked in, did I curse at you? Did I demand anything? Did I threaten anyone?" They didn't answer. "Exactly," Jordan said. "And yet, you laughed at me, mocked me, called security. Not because I did anything wrong, but because you assumed I didn't belong. Because I looked like someone you could ignore." Brielle tried to speak. I didn't know." Jordan raised a hand. "That's the point. You didn't know. And you didn't care to find out." Then he looked back at Marissa. "You know I've spent millions building this place. I've trained every manager on respect, on dignity, on representation. I told you from day one this hotel wasn't just about luxury. It was about ownership, about making space for people who are always made to feel like outsiders." A pause, then the mic drop. "And if my own team can't get that right, then we have a very big problem." Marissa nodded stiffly. "I'll take care of it." "No," Jordan replied. "I'll take care of it." He pulled out his phone again, not to call, to record. Facing the staff, he said, "This video will go out internally to every team in every branch. Let this be a lesson. The people you disrespect today could very well be the people signing your paycheck tomorrow." Then, almost as an afterthought, he added, "And Brielle, Cole, you're relieved of your duties, effective immediately." The room went silent. And somewhere in that silence, power shifted. Not because Jordan yelled, not because he embarrassed anyone, but because he reminded everyone who he was and why this hotel existed in the first place. You could feel it in the air, the kind of shift that doesn't just change a moment, it rewrites the entire room. As soon as Jordan announced the termination, a gasp rippled through the lobby. Not dramatic, just stunned silence. Even the marble floors seemed to hold their breath. Brielle's eyes welled up instantly. "Wait, please, Mr. Miles. I didn't mean..." But it was too late. She wasn't crying because she got caught. She was crying because now she understood. Cole didn't say a word, just backed away slowly, like he could somehow reverse the damage. And then, something even more unexpected happened. A woman across the lobby, older, black, dressed in a navy blue power suit, clapped. Once, then twice. And then, the rest of the room joined in. Guests who had watched it unfold. Employees who had seen enough. Even the bellhop by the elevator gave Jordan a nod. It wasn't applause for a firing. It was applause for truth. For someone finally saying what so many had felt for so long. Marissa, the director of operations, looked like she'd just been tossed into a PR firestorm. She stepped forward, whispering, "Mr. Miles, if we could maybe handle the rest of this in the Jordan cut her off gently. "No, we needed this moment. He turned back to the staff still behind the desk, the ones who had witnessed it all but said nothing. "Silence is complicity," he said calmly. "If you ever see a guest, any guest, being treated like they don't belong, and you say nothing, you're a part of the problem." Then he looked directly at the security guard who had been called to escort him out earlier. "You followed instructions. I respect that. But I want you to think about what would have happened if I really wasn't the owner." The guard nodded slowly, guilt etched all over his face. By now, phones were out, tweets were flying. A viral moment was being born right there in the lobby of the Stanton Royal. Jordan glanced down at his phone. 5 missed calls, 2 texts from the board, 1 from the hotel's PR director. "Are you okay? Should we prepare a statement?" He typed back just 1 sentence. "No need." The truth was the statement. And with that, he looked at Marissa one last time. "Clean house. Retrain the team. I want inclusion built into every level, not just our mission statement." She nodded without protest. The lobby had gone quiet again, but not out of fear, out of respect. Later that afternoon, after the guests had checked in and the noise of the lobby returned to its usual rhythm, Jordan called an emergency all-staff meeting in the main ballroom. He didn't ask. He summoned. Every department was there: housekeeping, management, front desk, security, catering. Even the marketing team that usually worked remote showed up, eyes wide, unsure of what was coming next. Jordan stood at the center of the room. No podium, no microphone, just him, in the same red polo and jeans. "I built this hotel for people like me," he began. "People who've been followed in stores, who've been asked to leave fancy restaurants, who've shown up to meetings and been mistaken for the help." The room was silent. This building was supposed to be different, not just in architecture, but in energy, in culture. We were supposed to be the place that saw everyone, that treated the janitor the same way we treat the CEO. He paused. "But today, I walked through the doors and got reminded that no matter how much money you make, how many degrees you earn, or how many walls you knock down if you look a certain way, there's still people waiting to shove you back into a box." Heads dropped. A few nodded slowly, some with shame, some with understanding. Jordan continued. "I didn't come here to fire 2 employees. I came here to hold up a mirror. Because the truth is, Brielle and Cole didn't act alone. They were a symptom of something deeper, of assumptions we all carry, whether we admit it or not." He turned to the managers in the front row. "How many times have we trained on customer service, but never on bias? How often have we rewarded politeness, but ignored empathy?" A murmur stirred in the crowd. Someone wiped their eyes. "This place has my name on the paperwork. Yes, but it's our home, and we're not going to let it become another glass castle built on top of invisible lines." Then he delivered the line that would later be quoted across social media, blogs, and employee handbooks. "Hospitality isn't about polished smiles and luxury linens. It's about making people feel seen. Because when you walk into a space and feel invisible, that's not service, that's violence." A pin could have dropped, and then he added, "Softer, but stronger. From this moment on, the Stanton Royal will not just be a hotel. It will be a reminder that power can wear jeans, that greatness has no uniform. And that respect isn't earned by appearance. It's a birthright." The room erupted in applause, not polite clapping, real, heavy, emotional applause. Because what they had just witnessed wasn't just a meeting. It was a reckoning. The next morning, the lobby looked the same: polished floors, fresh flowers, soft piano music, but the energy was different. A handwritten sign stood on the front desk. "Everyone belongs here." But it wasn't just a message, it was a promise. Brielle and Cole were officially removed from staff, their termination letters citing gross violation of the company's inclusion values. HR launched a new audit not just on hiring practices, but on how staff treated guests, coworkers, and vendors. Jordan's speech had gone viral overnight. The hotel's social media lit up, not with PR fluff, but with stories. Stories from guests who'd felt invisible elsewhere. Stories from employees who'd stayed silent too long. And stories from other hotels, asking how they could learn from what happened. Jordan didn't waste the momentum. He implemented mandatory equity training for all staff, starting with management. No more one-hour Zoom sessions with generic slides. This was deep, uncomfortable, soul-level work. Bias recognition, empathy drills, real accountability. He also launched an initiative called the Welcome Project, offering discounted bookings for nonprofit leaders, educators, and frontline workers who rarely felt welcomed in luxury spaces. It wasn't just good optics. It was the point. Corporate tried to spin up a press release, but Jordan stopped them. "No headlines," he said. "Let our actions speak louder." And they did. In just 1 week, the Stanton Royal had gone from a trending scandal to a national blueprint for reforming hospitality from the inside out. Guests kept booking. Reviews soared. And the same front desk that once turned away its own CEO now greeted every guest like they might own the building. 3 days later, Jordan stood alone at the corner of the rooftop terrace. It was early. The city below was still half asleep, and the sky hadn't decided whether to rain or shine. He sipped his coffee slowly. No emails, no meetings, no noise, just peace. Below him, the lobby buzzed quietly. A new staff rotation had begun. A new tone had been set. And in the place where he was once asked to leave, guests now smiled at each other like equals. But this wasn't about revenge. It was about repair. Jordan thought about the thousands of people who would walk through those doors, people wearing hoodies, uniforms, thrifted jackets, maybe even red polos. Would they be seen? Would they be heard? That was always the real mission. Not just to own the building, but to shift the foundation. Because the truth is, he never needed anyone's permission to belong. But how many others still think they do? That's why he built the Stanton Royal in the first place. To be more than a place to sleep. To be a message, carved not into marble but into people. And now, the message was clear. You can try to exclude us, ignore us, laugh at us, but we're still coming, still building, still owning the spaces you once said we didn't belong in. Jordan smiled as the sun finally broke through the clouds. He didn't need applause. He didn't need headlines. He had something better proof. Proof that dignity doesn't need to wear a suit. That power doesn't always announce itself. And that sometimes, all it takes to change the system is one man walking into his own building, refusing to leave. If you've ever been judged by how you look or told you don't belong, drop a comment below. Let's talk about it. And if this story moved you, like and subscribe. Because stories like this, we've got a lot more to tell.